Okay. I'd like to call the Fire District Board meeting to order February 20th. Could you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Would you call the roll, please?
Aldrich.
Here.
Fox.
Here.
Yep, Verflank.
Here.
And Phelps.
Yes.
And I think Beckman, North, and Pullen are absent.
Okay. Please turn off your cell phones. And try not to text during the meeting. It's against the Open Meetings Act. We have approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda that stands.
I'll support.
Madam Chair, did we discuss removing the dorm study since there weren't enough people here?
Right,
Okay.
I was just going to bring that up. We removed the dorm study from the agenda as we didn't have a full house today, so probably good to just do that once, so we'll wait till everybody's back from wherever they are. So, with that being said, those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
And opposed. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the approval of the January 16th minutes.
I'll make that motion. Approve the minutes from January 16th Fire Board meeting.
I'll support. I have a motion by Fox and support by Aldrich to approve the minutes of the January 16th meeting. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, moving on to public comment. I don't think the public has a place where they're going to comment. So, okay, moving on to special guest speakers. We'll have the audit review. Dan, you want to?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for inviting me to your meeting again this year, like you always do. Probably say this every year, but I really appreciate a 4 o'clock meeting. I go to too many 7 o'clock meetings, just like all of you do, so this is very nice. I appreciate the interest that you have in the audit and inviting us every single year, so appreciate the long-term relationship as well. I think for the board members, it's important for you to know that we really enjoy working with the fire department. Chief and Chris are always very responsive and helpful to us, so we appreciate that. But I think you all probably already know that Peter does an excellent job as your accountant. I think that's, I hesitate to say too many good things about people in those positions, but Peter does an excellent job. I think all of you are used to what I like to look at when I look at an auditor's report. There's 2 main things. Those are the auditor's communications and then make a few comments about the financial condition. So if you have that in front of you, I always like to look at the auditor's report, which is the page immediately after the table of contents. And for those of you who have been paying really close attention, that changed for the first time in 30 years. I memorized a 3-paragraph report when I was in school. Now sometimes it's 3 pages long. There's a number of reasons for that, but one of the positives is that right away we get to our opinion. I don't know if you remember before, but it would take a number towards the bottom of the first page at least before we gave our opinion, which is what you paid us to do. But now we realize that that's the most important thing, and we say it right away. So we start out by saying what we audited, and then the second paragraph we give our opinion, which is known as an unmodified opinion, where we say the financial statements are presented fairly. I think it's important that you know that every government gets the same report. We don't write this word for word specifically for you. This is a report that's developed by the Audit Standards Board, so every single governmental audit report will read like this word for word. And what you really need to know is what did we have to do to allow us to give that unmodified opinion. But we'll talk about that a little bit more later. At the bottom of that page, there's a section called Responsibilities Management. I think it's always important to me that you realize that ultimately it's management's responsibility for the fair presentation of these financial statements and the internal controls or checks and balances over the transactions. Now, a little bit more about that unmodified report. I'd like to point you to what I call management letter. It's not bound in that document, but it's a separate letter. I forgot to check this if you had it. Okay. If you don't, that is perfectly fine. There's another letter we issue to the fire board that talks about 6 or 8 different things that we have to put in writing, and one of those things is the internal controls. So a number of years ago, probably about 10, auditors had to put in writing any internal control problems that we came across. Almost all of our clients, out of the 120 clients, probably all but 5 or 6 of them don't get a comment, a material weakness, if you will, for the fact that we have to prepare your financial statements and our adjustments. This is what I was referring to before. Auditors can give that unmodified opinion, but sometimes we require that management or ask them to make corrections or adjustments to their financial statements. In your case, we only make one adjustment related to your pension liability, defined benefit pension plan. There's a number of things that have to be done there. We adjust the liability as well as deferred inflows and outflows related to that. It can be really complicated. It's the type of thing I'm quite sure Peter doesn't want to do or want to learn how to do.
No.
Of all of
It's one of those things once a year that you gotta do.
It's hard enough for us to do it, to be
Yeah.
honest with you, so it's a challenge. And of all those clients, I can only think of one who was a CPA that used to work at a CPA firm who does that. So that's the one entry. There's really no fund entries that we have to make to correct Peter's records. So that's why I complimented him earlier. If you read that letter carefully, it talks about things like material weaknesses and terms that I didn't come up with. But if that's the only one, a lot of governments, we might make a couple dozen corrections to their internal records. We don't have to do that here, so that's terrific. Just a couple comments about your financial condition. Maybe the easiest place to look is on page 11. Page 11 is a balance sheet for the fire district. It's a picture at a point in time, if you will, of the finances of the district's fund. You can see the total assets, almost $1 million. Fundamental accounting equation is assets less liabilities equals equity. Your equity is called fund balance. I always like to look at unassigned fund balance, which is really what you have available to spend as a percentage of your current year expenditures. The unassigned fund balance is right about $903,000. As a percentage of current year expenditures, that's 51%. A good financial planner will tell an individual, and I think it's the same for a government, that if you have 3 to 6 months worth set aside in a savings account or fund balance, which is really what this is, you're in good shape. So you're on the outside edge of that 6 months. I think that's right where you want to be. If you get too much higher than that, you probably have too much fund balance. Get a little lower than that, you have a hard time making payroll every month. So you're right where you want to be. And one other thing that's always a consideration here, I mentioned the defined benefit pension plan. If you go to page 25, page 25 has far too much information about that pension plan. The column to the left is related to the plan and its funding. So the most recent fiscal year is 2022. That actually relates to balances as of December 31, 2021. But the liability is $547,000. The fiduciary net position or the cash you have available is $570,000. So you're in a very unique position where you are fully funded at the end of the year. If you look at the trend, you were in the 70%, 75, 79% for a number of years now. All of a sudden, it went to $104,000. So you're fully funded. That's very rare. I think I only have one other client that's in that position. The reason for that is, if you look at the third row from the bottom, there was a difference in the expectation versus experience related to the fire chief passing away in the past year. So I think that's the reason why that changed. But you are fully funded, so that's rare, which should mean that your contributions will go down slightly in the next few years. Other than that, I have nothing else. I probably spent a lot of time talking about your financial statements, but I think that's enough for you with the agenda that you have. But I'd be happy to answer any questions, either now or at any time. We're always available for you.
Anybody have any questions? Greg?
Dan, sir, page 7, changes in net position. The third paragraph, the total cost of the district's operations. My question, sir, is, more than 53% of the expenses in the amount of $843,000 represent personnel costs. Could you offer any comments on that? Is that average, is it below average, above average? Any comments as far as public safety entities?
That's an excellent question. To be honest, to give you a good answer, I'd probably have to do a little more research
Okay,
to compare that to others.
fair enough.
But I work with a lot of cities and other fire authorities, so I guess I don't know how your salaries compare necessarily, but the interesting thing of total costs, I often see 50 to 60%. That's very normal being personnel costs. That's going to fluctuate with the amount of assets and the depreciation you have, so it'd be hard for me to do a fair analysis of that, but it's certainly not excessive by any means. I like the fact that you have the full-time officers. I think most of the communities I work with are working in that direction, that's for sure. So I hope that helps answer the
Yeah,
question.
thank you. Appreciate it.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Dan. Safe travels.
Excellent job as always.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate you kept the snow away today, snow and ice.
Just for you.
You can come back Wednesday if you want.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay, deleted the dorm study request for payments. Do I have a motion to pay the bills?
Make a motion to pay the bills. Find it again.
It's on the screen too, but
I can't see that part.
We need one right here, like Douglas.
He's making it big.
$170,090.22.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion by Phelps and second by Fox to pay the bills in the amount of $170,090.22. Is there any discussion, any questions? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
yes. Phelps,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Aldrich.
Yes.
And Verplank.
Yes.
Passes 4-0.
All right, moving on. Could you give us a financial report?
Yeah, so on page, what's that, 38, 41, so the revenues, everybody's property taxes, if you haven't paid them yet, you're late, so we've collected, 56% of our revenues, and I imagine probably in the next 2 weeks, the township and both cities will have everything they've collected paid to us, and we'll be caught up with everything else from the county sometime in late May, early June, so. You can see in the far right column at the top, you got the first three large number of the property taxes, and you see all those numbers that are with the parentheses, 13,000, 17,000, 26, and 21, and 1,200. That's all excess revenues that we've collected so far to date over what was originally budgeted. So it was like inspection, plan review fees, cost recovery, that federal grant, some donations, interest, and we haven't sold any old assets. So far, we've collected just shy of $1.2 million on a $2.1 million budget. And then, the expenses so far, the payroll is the one that's, we're basically 7 months paid. We're gonna have some kind of a payroll adjustment at some point when we start getting in the negative numbers. But so far, I think we're in fairly decent shape. The only thing on the second page down, the only thing we're over is the general insurance is $2,000 more than we originally budgeted. And then the truck payment, when we paid off the truck paid full, that was $2,300 over. Then we got about $1,400 in extra long-term capital, but I think we got one of those federal grants for that exercise equipment that's in there that wasn't originally budgeted. So that's some of that offset revenue at the top, or the grant, got the parentheses. But I think, you know, at some point, the payroll costs are more than what we originally budgeted for a year ago, so at some point, when
We have more calls.
get more calls and, you know, the pay increases, I mean, everybody, I mean, what pay increases are out there are just, it's getting bitey, but it's the way of the world today, so. I don't know if anybody has any particular line item questions or issues.
You're doing great.
Yeah, and I only like Dan said at $900,000, you know, if you look, and we got a $2 million budget, you know, we really, you know, in the next couple of years is gonna be tight with cash flow, because, you know, everybody puts the tax collection in the winter bill, which is really the first of the year, so we're 6 months into that cycle, so that's a tough position to be. If we have any really big ticketed items, we always have, now we're back in a position where we gotta wait until like December or January to pull the trigger on any big ticketed items for the next few years to build that, you know, that rainy day fund up, because we spent, what, close to $800,000 on that truck, now we got it finished, so. We're in good shape. I was at a fire board meeting here 2 weeks ago, and they wanted to buy a 30-year-old truck and retrofit it where it didn't have all the electronics, and some board members, I thought they were gonna throw water.
Get the buckets out.
Yeah, 'cause they told me, be prepared for an $800,000 new engine here in another year or two, so. Expensive world.
Getting more expensive every day. All right, thank you, Peter. We'll
Thanks,
have
Peter. Yep.
the fire chief comment now.
Yes, thank you. Chris, if we could go, so, Eric's outstanding handiwork on the data, the fifth straight month of a record call volume. We're up of just about almost 9%. So you can pretty much see, and I think what's, again, we talk about this, you know, we ended up the year, I think, with 34% of our calls. So 34% of the time, we have a chance of another call at the same time. Just by way of reference, we were on the highway, a long call last Thursday. One car, one semi. We were 4 hours. Very expensive call. And 2 or 3 calls went off while we were out there. Structure fire in Hamilton, a medical, and the third one I'm lost on what it was. But those are the things, you know, that give me gray hairs, because, you know, we're on the highway, and then you're backfilling the station, and you're hoping you've got enough people at the station. So those are the challenges that we all face in the fire service, you know. You know, we don't do 150 or 200 calls a year. There's such demands that, you know, when we're on the highway, shutting down a federal highway, you gotta do it the right way.
Mhm.
So everything else is pretty much follows true to the matrix. The motor vehicle incidents, you know, we've got some, I'll discuss that in detail later on, but, you know, that call Thursday was probably a $5,000 call. Peter called me when we had it shut down, and we're detouring all this traffic of 196 to a very short exit ramp on a Blue Star. I took a family back to South Haven, came back, got trapped in the traffic because I couldn't take Blue Star, sat an hour in the traffic, and the pager went off for a structure fire. And then I had to take the shoulder. So you're like, oh my God, thank God we were called off on the structure fire. Oh, there was a car fire. The car fire, any fire. So, you know, those are the types of things that and the roads were so bad. And I remember the day you could not shut down the highway. So, you can see everything in there pretty much follows suit. Again, as the call volume escalates, you can see that in the data. Department of Fire Prevention wise, I'm sorry I lost my place here. We can pull that chart up too, and you can see the activity on rentals. As I try to emphasize, the good one, the tall column to the right, as fire prevention educational hours for the staff. We're proud of that, and that's the way it should be. You can see Michigan fire statistics. Unfortunately, 21 deaths and 21 fires, and that's of what, the 14th? Yeah, 14th of February.
Wow.
You know, 18% increase in fires. We hate to see that sort of activity, but it is what it is, as they say. So that's what we have to share with that. Next up is, I'm really proud to share with you, out of the EMS Ad Hoc Planning Committee came a notice by one of the members on our data, and that was falls. The amount of falls being the #1 call. So one of our great members, Cindy Miller, said, hey, what can we do with that? I can get some partners on this. So she contacted Holland Hospital, put us together on a conference call, and we met with Melissa, who is a fall prevention specialist, and we'll be partnering with them. And the Girl Scout Troop 80586 wanted to do a program through the fire department, with the fire department. I suggested to Michelle, the point of contact, they work on educational, informational connections, the Girl Scouts. So we don't have like Holland's got a community center or Evergreen Commons, I think it is. We don't have those avenues, but we do have places we can go. I'm going to speak in spring, Harbor Senior Apartments. I'll be speaking on extinguishers and fall prevention techniques. So that's been kind of a really interesting thing. What can we do?
Are the Girl Scouts doing the fall, is that what they're targeting, the fall prevention thing?
They're going to partner with us
Uh-huh.
to find out how we can mitigate this,
Okay.
where we suggest their role might come in, because some of this is occupational therapist
Mhm.
or physical therapist governed.
Mhm.
So we're actually working on what can we do, because we're not OTs and PTs. What can we do? You know, we are just putting things on the website that Dan came up with a great idea months ago.
Mhm.
One of our problems was the form. How can we not add another form to our staff? I'm working with Eric on a CDC abbreviated form to track the data. We can't fix the problem if I don't know what cost it. Well, we already have 2 pages of forms. The next one we got was 7 pages. It's got to be pared back.
Mhm.
So Eric's got a draft. Matter of fact, he sent me some more data today that was highly confidential. So it's in place, I can tell you that.
Good.
When you get to looking at the data, I'd be curious, and if it's available, I would assume it is for incidents when people fall. They flesh out something about how it happened. I'd be curious, how many of those happen when, happen when somebody is wearing only socks and not shoes? Because friction goes away when you got socks on.
Slippery floors.
Slippery floors. And I'm then putting column 1 and column 2 together. But I wonder even about the possibility of distributing socks, which is a relatively low-cost item, that have those rubber,
Like you get to the hospital.
yeah, like they use at the hospital or for little kids.
Mhm.
But it literally gives you,
Traction. So, great point. So, in our meeting with David Blatt, Melissa, Holland Fire, and a few others, we are going to go after a grant with what to ask for. The #1 thing, I was big on grab bars. Not that easy. Who's going to install them?
Mhm.
What about the liability of drilling into nothing? Or into a water line? So we're working on night lights, anti-slip socks, removable rugs, little rugs, having a backing on the rug. So we have about 6 things we're going to ask for, as well as grab bars. And then we talked about who could install this stuff. I reached out to Plainfield Fire Department, that is a very active fall prevention program. they engage senior neighbors to install grab bars, smoke alarms, things like that. I emailed them waiting for a response. I believe they're only Kent County. So, let's just say we're working
That's the
on
kind of
it.
stuff a Girl Scout troop could be, could be a good intermediary, to get those things to the next door neighbors or, whatever. It's a real public service as opposed to some of that.
So that's what we,
Girl Scouts.
how can we not be intrusive and say, hey, we want to come in your home and do a home assessment? We have to be invited in, how can we do it? We have to be careful who is going to do that. And we're working on it, like you said.
Well, I wonder if tapping into some of those service clubs in the high school. I know when my daughter went to high school, she was on National Honor Society, and they're supposed to do so many hours of community service, but there isn't any community service in Saugatuck to be done. So maybe we could tap into some of those organizations, like Rotary has some high school organization, I can't think of the name of it right now. But those groups that need community service projects, maybe they would
Engage
be...
them. Like it's something as simple as installing a, battery operated or, motion sensitive night light. I mean, I use night lights in my home for my path of travel to get to the garage, so I don't wake up Vicky, because I wouldn't
Not a
be
good
here
thing.
if I did that.
Maybe the shop class could learn to install the grab bars, things like that. That would be kind of handy
That's-
anyhow to...
I don't, that's
I don't
something
know.
probably that's, to be honest, is something probably more in the line of myself, Chris Mannels, and Mike Betts.
Okay.
That worked on facilities, because if they aren't done right,
I know, that's
I
what I
install
was thinking,
them
you
in-
need supervision with that stuff.
yeah, I install them in healthcare facilities every week. So did Chris, and so is Mike Betts. So I don't mean to disregard your,
No,
Well,
I...
maybe for distribution of some of those things, the socks and that kind of thing,
that
we could
type of thing is
involve
something.
Girl Scouts or
Correct.
those clubs or whoever needs community service.
Every time I leave my house by the back door, I thank R.J. Peterson, who was in his late 80s, and he used to stop by with, if you knew R.J., with any number of requests or missions or whatever, going to feed the ducks or whatever we were doing. But I have you go up 1 and 2. The dog always jumps it, but you go up 1 and 2 steps. And there was no rail. And R.J. said, you got to get a rail. And he was on me, and finally I put, it's only railing, it's only that long. Now, I grab that railing every single time.
Railings are a big safety item. I mean, I have 2 steps in my garage, and I have a railing for me. I've had it for 25 years.
Well, all the old folks' homes, or whatever they call them, in the hallways, in hospitals, there's a railing on both sides.
So what we can do to minimize the fall, because once there's a fractured hip,
Yeah.
the older we get, the longer it takes just to heal. So that's the big preventative. Fall intervention, that's what we're trying to
I'm
do.
thinking too on messaging when it gets to that stage.
What about Allegan County? It's on everybody's winter tax bills, the senior service millage. This town, this area pays a lot of money, nobody uses it in this area.
And
They're always looking
that's
for
something
money.
I need to reach out to Allegan County to find out if they have that service. I don't know the answer to that.
I know they help people clean sometimes. I'm old.
I need help cleaning.
I know, me too.
I found.
I'll find out.
I think when you get to the point of messaging for people, to the individuals, to get a few, case studies, real histories where, Mary Jo so-and-so says, this saved my life. I didn't fall, or the story of the one that did fall, and that cost me 7 months in rehab and all the rest of it, to try and get their attention to understand what's on the other side of a fall, which if you've never had a fall, you don't much think of, I'm afraid.
Well, and I think, especially here, it's hard to find where the seniors are and how to get to them. Like, you can't go to Evergreen Commons and have a program because seniors don't gather in this area. There's not, other than at that horrible nursing home, there's no place that seniors gather.
The Annex Coffee Shop every morning.
Oh, yeah, that'd be interesting to have it.
Or what about the churches?
Or maybe the church is being involved.
That was an
yeah.
avenue, it was identified, yeah, sure.
So, you know, just finding people and then going out to them and offering them these things. Look, you're getting older, and, you know, my mother was a great throw rug person, and I'm like, you're gonna kill my dad, so you need to get those
Well,
off.
there may have been messing to her meds.
And I don't know why you need those throw rugs, because we're just gonna rip up that carpeting and throw it away anyway, so, you know, it's that kind of thing. So what are you saving that carpeting for? Use it. So that's the kind of thing we're kind of looking at, trying to get to people and find people, and then...
I still have 2 clients I'm taking care of, 2 elderly clients that they only have me, you know, and that
Yeah.
was from doing hair 5 years ago. You know, they just won't go out there, you know,
And
they're
you know what?
comfortable with me, and
Hairdressers are a good place to look.
they
for
really
those.
are. Boy, Keith used to say, we're gonna need a gurney to get them in here.
Well, yeah, and I go to Julie now, and that's
Oh, she's
her
gotta
whole
have the-
clientele
Well, but-
is
Yeah.
elderly.
Mhm. Mine was
But they're
just-
dying off, and she'll tell you how,
Yeah.
how
Oh, yeah.
drastically
Right.
it's
Mhm.
falling off.
Yeah, and, I mean, it's amazing.
You
But
see
it's
the-
amazing how many people she knows.
She
It
does,
is.
she knows everybody.
She does.
You gotta be careful what you say.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
Right.
That Julie Durham.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can't believe she's still doing it.
I can't either. I mean, she's got to be as old as I am.
She's my age. She was in my class in school.
Was she?
Was she?
And she's great. But she knows everybody. Anyway, moving on.
The next item we have is, several of us, the officers, were real adamant on, I'll keep this not technical. We have to know how much water we're flowing out of that nozzle. We have to deliver a certain amount of gallon per minute. How do you know? And this is a serious thing. How do we know how much water is coming out of the end of the nozzle? The only way to do it is measure it with some expensive equipment. And everyone just kind of blows it off. Well, if you have an injury or death, the lawyers aren't going to blow it off. So we got a sales demonstration and brought in a company that Chris arranged to show us equipment that would test this. And we only tested 4 nozzles, and one of them didn't perform. These are $700,000 nozzles. So like it or not, this stuff, I'm going to address it. So I said, when this happened, I said, Chris is a perfect opportunity for a grant, a small term grant, which is under $50,000. So Chris took the liberty of researching this and putting it together, and we had a fast deadline. It was done last Friday. So a couple of us reviewed it, and so we do have the test equipment in the form of another grant. Test equipment was over $5,000. But make no mistake, we're going to fix this. We've got a lot of nozzles.
Yeah.
But I think this is a problem in the fire service because Grasscoop's got the same issue. He took 17 nozzles out of service. Hamilton has the same issue. And those are just chiefs that'll listen. I want you to know we are doing something about it. Only last thing I had is just a respectful, kind request. Your direct contact, if you aren't going to make a meeting, is to contact the chair, Jane Burplank. That's all I have, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Unfinished business, cost recovery?
So last month at the board meeting, we talked about cost recovery. I think I brought to your attention, we've got some outstanding cost recovery. I've not heard from the attorney reply yet, as far as, the prosecutor yet. The attorney feels the prosecutor should handle it. I've not heard anything. The call on February 3rd, 2023 was a $10,000 call. Christmas Day was $4,400. Some big ones here. So the question is, how would the board like me to proceed? Probably the biggest option you have is to enter into a collection agency agreement. Some of the cost recovery fire service companies, there's a big one that one of the fire departments uses around here. The problem is, they use a national recognized fee schedule that does not represent Saginaw fee schedule. We are less. We should only be able to capture what we determine as a formula based on the truck and what our true wages are with benefits. And I looked at some of their rates, and it's just one company, and I wouldn't engage in that company. But Chris and I, a couple other people did some research. There are collection agencies we can engage. But I did not want to spend a lot of time on that if the board doesn't want me to go to the next level.
Would they take a percentage?
Of course.
Or would they do a flat rate that we hire them and they're just,
It's a percentage.
it's a percentage?
And they all vary.
And like, how much are you talking?
I didn't want to,
You
there's
didn't
probably
get there?
6 of them
Okay.
that they're all different.
Uh-huh.
What's the highest?
I don't know, because I didn't contact
Yeah.
all of them.
I wanna say the ballpark, 25 to 40% of what we're owed is what we lose to them, based on.
It's all over.
Yeah, but that would all depend on the final contract, and a lot of it depends on the gross of how much you're looking to recoup, that then they'll fluctuate that percentage. Like, if you're asking them to recoup $100 grand, they might lower it a little bit, but if you're only asking them to go recoup 10 grand, well, then the stakes are different, for example, was how the one was explained to me anyway,
Oh.
so.
Yeah, I contacted 6 of them, and they were all different. There wasn't a reduction on a fee based on the amount, you know. So that's why.
And that would not be engaged for every cost reduction. It would only be engaged when
The ones
you're-
we
when somebody
select.
stiffs you.
And the way it appears is the commercial traffic is thumbing their nose at us. And that's where, like Friday, the call Friday was probably $5,400.
Are you dealing more with insurance companies or private
We do
individuals?
not deal with insurance companies.
Okay.
We found it's another layer of bureaucracy. It's the owner who's responsible. What you do with that cost recovery is between you and your carrier. Some are self-insured. We had one semi company, a big one, that was self-insured. Got a check in 2 weeks. So,
I'm wondering if you can't, maybe you would know, Peter, if you couldn't, on those that you go for cost recovery, slap $1,000 fee or whatever number for the cost recovery expense. I mean, to try and recoup some of that, so that we recoup it and they have to pay it.
Attorney fees, I mean, if you went to court, you could ask for attorney fees too, but I.
yeah, if you go to court, and one of the ways was doing small claims court and all that.
That's like a big range.
You know, the thing is, you need a lawyer to fight a lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna get slaughtered in small claims court if you have me go to court. Please
Well,
don't
it's
do
not
that.
this
Yeah.
is not the department's
Right.
business. I mean, it's.
Well, I
Not-
think we get what we get, and taking people to court and all that stuff is just expensive. I don't think we'll make much. I think we should just be satisfied with whatever people pay and let it go.
Not do collection agency?
Not do a collection agency.
Why not? That's free money. And it's free money with zero expense here
Not,
for that part of it. I mean, you're leaving money on the table. You don't pay them unless they recover.
is that true?
Yeah, that's right, it's usually, the ones I've seen are anywhere from 30 to 50%.
Yeah, I know, they take a good
They
hit.
take good
But
hit.
again, you don't use them and
Well, how much time does that entail to use?
I think the way I would look at it, if I assign, and some of them, like one of them is fire recovery. I can't I take the low-cost method. We send them a notification first. You have a deadline to answer this. And the appeal process is in there. They can come to you and appeal for a reduction. You know you've been through that. So, when that doesn't happen, then we send them a second notice and it's ignored. Then what do? With one of the collection agencies, they won't intervene after my first letter. They either handle it or they don't. With another collection agency, I can try to collect, and then I can turn it over to them. Here's what you might consider. If it's a commercial carrier, you might want to consider some sort of an agreement with a collection agency. I don't recommend you do it for a homeowner, certainly none of our residents, that type of thing. I would say, you know, when you have a commercial carrier, and there's a number of things, hazmat, a citation, shut down the highway, when you add those components together, you have an expensive call. We had a couple of hazmat releases lately. That's big bucks. And I think that's where you might want to consider that now. What we can do is, I can bring them each month to you and have you look at those cases, if you like. I feel I've got a pulse on the board. Maybe you can try this. Let's see how it works on a pilot program.
It wouldn't hurt to try.
And so to answer your question, Jane, I think I turn it over to them, but then I don't have to, because the lawyer, there's nothing really they can do.
Well, how much
unless we engage in a lawsuit.
Okay, if we
Yeah.
turn it over to them,
Right.
how much, what do we have to give them for them to be able to do that?
It's,
What-
the ones I talked to was, we submit the file, case file, and if there's any collections where their fee is. Again, that was 25 to, I didn't have any 50%, Chris did. It's all over the, you know.
I just,
So it wouldn't involve me, and like, I talked to one of our neighboring departments who has it, they actually have some cases they're getting payments. Like, we have one now we get payments on. You know,
Whatever happened, I thought in the beginning, 10 years ago, that they were putting it on their record bill in these commercial accounts, and the record company, when they got paid, they paid up. That went away, or?
I tried that.
Tried that, okay.
But state police said, you can't do that. Matter of fact, the lawyer said, he says, don't put a lien on the property. I said, who reviewed and wrote that ordinance? The lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was told in a directive, don't do it. So I was not happy about that. And we did that. They recommended not doing it. But that's not gonna help you out with a trucking company in Ohio and California. So, that's what you might consider is some of these commercial incidents. I mean, say it was 50%. If I don't have to do anything, or this department, and we collect $5,000, that's gonna help me with equipment. I just incurred a couple $1,000s in expenses on fixing a MDOT trailer that broke down.
okay, my feeling is if the department doesn't have to put a great deal of effort into compiling all
Right.
kinds of stuff for these collection agencies,
Then try it.
then try it. But if it entails a great deal of work from anybody who's already overworked, then I would say no, it's not worth it.
Do they operate with a contract?
There's an agreement. But, and like the last one I looked at, a guy I worked with at the yacht club owned a company, and he steered me to them. They no longer do EMS or fire recovery. Then he sent me to a couple other places. So, it was an agreement that was a 30-year, you could break 30-day agreement, you could break it. Some of them were much more relaxed as far as you can't approach the clients or any of that.
It's kind of interesting that they don't, why is it that they don't do EMS and fire? I mean, there has to be a reason.
That was one agency,
Okay.
yeah, that was the first one that Scott Prince shared with me.
Okay.
So I just want, and if I find that it's labor laborious or cumbersome, I'll bring it back to the board. But if you want me to go and filter out some of these agreements, I'll be happy to do that with no commitment on money, as far as upfront money, that we don't have to enter into. We'll discard any of that.
I'd like to see their, I mean, if it's possible, evaluate them too on their own success rate. Because some collection, I mean, you
Yep.
have to assume that some people just stiff you all the way out.
Mhm.
The fire recovery, that, said, I gave no, they said it was 70%.
I think,
Yeah.
sure. I think what a lot of these collection agencies do, is that a private individual, if you don't pay, it goes against your credit rating. So I'm assuming with commercial, it's gonna go against like your Dun & Bradstreet, that out there, they go after, they've got the avenues and how to, as an individual, go after your credit rating, or go after your credit rating of some kind of commercial business. And it's gonna show up and run on your Dun & Bradstreet, you got a collection agency after you, so. And that's where I think.
Whatever tactics they need to take.
Yeah.
There's no cost to us up front.
Well, that, yeah,
And,
and time.
And time.
it takes time and paperwork away from you.
We assemble, well, it's the follow-up,
Yeah.
and then a second letter, and then, I was in the post office 45 minutes in line to
Is that
do
all?
a certified letter. I'm moaning right now, sorry.
That's annoying.
With a door that wouldn't close, and it was 12 degrees.
I think they fixed that.
Oh, I love it, the door doesn't work.
I almost
And
got in the
neither do any of you, so.
I almost got in the truck and delivered the letter myself. So it can be effective, Phil. I think you should probably consider letting me explore a few other modest options that don't tie me up a lot. I don't want another project,
The
but
other thing, you're only dealing with people who are out of the area, so there's
Mhm.
no PR risk at all,
No.
or upset.
But, this late, I just had this updated this morning, it's $46,000.
Okay.
I can fix up a lot of equipment for $46,000.
Half of
Yeah.
that's 23 and.
That's only 23.
and 23 and 70% of
Oh,
that's.
come on, it sounded
15.
better when I said $46,000.
That's 23, and then there's other, yeah. Okay.
So do I have
It's worth doing,
permission?
I think.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Thank
think
you.
so.
Thank you.
Okay, we have no new business, and we have one correspondence, a compliment email to Brad Escobar for what he did for.
We got copied an email from a resident in downtown Saugatuck about some extraordinary efforts to one of our firefighters and his wife. I want to try to keep names out, the patient's name. The person who sent it was a local businessman, and his daughter had issues with a medical condition, called my firefighter's wife, asked for what do I do with this. Long story short, it turned out where she was in a serious state of affairs, they drove to the house and transported. They said either take an ambulance or we'll take you to the hospital. So Brad and his wife drove the patient to the hospital. The writer of the email said that saved her life. You should know about those things. So that's why we wanted to be careful about the sensitive nature of the email. That's why we're reading it out in public.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
And you had the one stopping with the.
We also had one which I'm kind of surprised at my staff. So we recognize CPR saves, but we don't recognize giving Narcan to somebody and saving his life. Well, you'd hear me if we saved somebody from drowning. So I was kind of surprised, but nonetheless, that's, my staff felt, you know, that's just what we're supposed to do. Make no mistake, that person was brought in and was dying. I had a doctor tell me, Kyle and his team revived that person with Narcan. I call it a save,
Yeah.
but I am a minority, and I want you to know that.
And that was.
He would be dead.
That was also another person from, not from the area, right?
I don't think they were from the area.
Was
they're
it?
not.
And that was another, we're like a walk-in clinic,
Yeah.
which is, I think, extraordinary.
Well, in a situation like that, you look for who can help me. I mean, a cop or anybody, I mean.
Well, I think in some countries, people just get Narcan. I mean, in Sweden and things, so there's, I don't know, everybody's just walking
Like
around with that.
aspirin or what?
Yeah, I don't know.
Sure,
I
try
read
it.
about that, yeah.
I thought you, yeah,
Yeah.
Well, anyway, congratulations,
Thank
Carl,
you.
on a
Yeah.
good day.
Yeah.
Mhm.
and Brad, well, I told Brad, I shook his hand over the weekend, so,
Good.
yeah, way to go, Kyle.
Mhm.
You make
Good
us so
job.
proud.
You get an attaboy.
Yeah.
He was like so cavalier about it, yeah, well, yeah, you know, stuff happens.
I had a friend that's daughter died, so you know, it was huge if they could have saved her, so it's a big deal, big problem.
Opiate?
Yeah, fentanyl.
It sure is.
Mhm.
Okay, any public comments? Fire board, Stacy?
We had a special meeting last week at the library, and Dana Bird did a presentation about the water system, and boy, I learned a lot. It was very good. So I think there might be on our website, I'm not positive about that, some information about that, but it was, he started from Singapore and went all the way, and it really cleared up a lot of things that I didn't know, so that was well worth the time.
Can I comment on that too?
Sure.
It was really great to see township spend money on extending the water line down Wiley Street.
Oh.
The water main.
Mhm.
That costs money, and you wouldn't do it unless it was looped.
Mhm.
And it looks like the special assessment district will go through.
Mhm.
I mean, that's
good.
admirable.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
And that's not
Good for
easy.
you.
Elliot Central Community Fire going through with a request of a trooper on scene of the address of 1975.
Okay,
Dan.
1975
On the ambulance,
Oh,
The-
I meant to bring that up.
For an 8-year-old male, supervised, you can hear the subject yelling out.
Dr. Jane, there may be a second working group coming together, in addition to the professional doctor, medical professional people that are in the first working group, because focused on how we legally might get this set up, because the fire district has no authority to contract for ambulance service. I don't think. Now, we need to get Jeff Sluggett involved, but in the same way as we have the authority for the fire service and EMS and whatever, that came in the charter or the intergovernmental agreement that created the fire district, because the authority to do that rests with the three jurisdictions. Not, you can't just go ahead and expand out and out and out. I would guess that that's going to be required for offering basic life, whatever they call it, BLS. That we get an intergovernmental agreement from the township, Douglas and Saugatuck to say, and I know that Douglas Township and Saugatuck don't want to be in that business.
Mhm.
So, but to officially put it, legally put it here so that there's a line. So, you don't want to deal with lawyers when something bad happens and go, well, we thought we had the right to do it, and then they say you didn't, and who the hell knows what. Lawyers get creative. So anyway, with a lawyer and probably representatives from each of the jurisdictions, we're going to try and wrestle that one to the ground. The reason to have each of the jurisdictions represented is because it's going to be an intergovernmental agreement. We want to kind of make that happen smoothly and honestly as quickly as possible, so that we're good to go.
So, oh, go ahead, Scott, and then I'll give a report from that EMS.
Me? What are the chances of getting Zoom meetings going again?
We can't hold it, you can watch, we can do a Zoom meeting, you can watch it, but you can't participate.
Okay.
You can't even comment.
Mm-mm. You can comment during public.
You can't comment as a board
As a
member.
board member?
But you
Okay.
can't comment as a board member.
That's
And you
good enough
can't
reason.
vote.
Yeah.
So, moving on to the EMS thing, we've kind of decided that the next step is to meet with AMR and Life and discuss what they're gonna do next, because there's a new BLS protocol in the county. So we kinda wanna get a feel for where they're going with that protocol and what they are thinking about providing for us. And then, after that meeting, then I think we need to go into another group of people to do this legally, what do we need to do? Because our ambulance service is set up on a good old boy handshake agreement that happened a long time ago. And we need to get something concrete and something in writing, because ambulance services
And the
is like-
jurisdictions need it.
Yes, the
Because
jurisdictions.
something
need it.
horrible happens in one of those ambulances, and the lawyers start looking for who they can sue. They're gonna sue the ambulance company for sure. They're not gonna sue us, because we got no
We have
horse in
nothing
the
to do.
race.
No.
They're gonna sue the jurisdiction.
So we need to straighten that out next. This is, like I said, if we get this done in a year, we'll be lucky. There's a lot of different elements attached to this whole EMS question. So that's kind of what we're looking at next.
It's also thorny because, you go back to the beginning, the constituents all think it's our job.
Yeah.
It's your job. They think that they think there are ambulances in this garage down here. Maybe they think there's two of them, but they think it's sited here, and
Yeah,
that's
people.
not. You got to clarify that. I mean, we've got to get it set up so BLS is headed to be centered here. It's all in lockstep legally appointed by the jurisdictions. The jurisdictions would have to probably open meeting it so they can hear from their constituents. I want to, this is great, or I didn't know the fire department wasn't doing this, or whatever they're going to say, but move it along.
So we need to decide who's going to be involved in that next committee. Every jurisdiction needs to be involved. Somebody.
Are managers doing this now, or not? I don't know who was on it from the
Well,
township.
we haven't decided.
That's-
I mean, who's on it?
Right now, nobody.
Oh, okay.
It's just doctors.
Okay.
That
all right,
group is
yeah,
just
okay.
medical professionals.
So that, we have to decide who's going to do that, who's the best person to involve in that, who's involved in the city, that kind of thing. So we will be discussing that at the next meeting as well. So,
Can I
sure.
add on? I have two things I wanted to bring up.
Go ahead.
First on the BLS. So Allegan County passed a protocol that allows BLS now, okay? Basic life support transport, private, fire department, whatever. So I did get a reply from AMR. I have not gotten anything from Life yet. On the lines of, are you going to enter the BLS transport business? If so, when? How many units will be here? For example, I was told there's 4 BLS units in Kalamazoo. 4 BLS units won't even help Allegan County. It will do nothing, in my opinion. So, yeah, they're gonna do it, but, so AMR said we don't know when, and we don't have those details to be determined. So at least they have plans. They already do BLS. They have 2 BLS units. Ottawa, medical control, passed the same concept. BLS transport is permissible. It is done in Kent County. So I called Battalion Chief Kyle Sabota, talked to him. Plainfield Fire Department, Kent County. I said, hey, what can you share with me about this new BLS protocol, which is brand new? He said, we haven't done it yet, at Plainfield Fire Department. However, what spiked it was, we're waiting 45 minutes for an ambulance in Priority 1 in Kent and Plainwell, which is a huge area.
Yeah, it is.
There's reasons large and small don't operate ALS. In our situation, if you want ALS here, you're going to pay a lot of money for it. Do you need it? So I wrote, BLS would be used for certain traumas, opiate, intox. Why are we sending an ambulance to somebody that's drunk? Priority 3s. Broken hip is a priority 3. There are many instances we can, what do we know? Unburden the system. That's what we're looking at. We don't want to be in the transport business. No one's looking to make money, whatever our cost. So we're reaching out. My next step is I want to try to have Chris and I go drive to Ann Arbor and talk to Ann Arbor. They're doing this, but I think it's so new yet, and I don't know anybody in Ann Arbor. But we want to find out. And if he and I got to drive to the other side of the state, we're going to do it, get some information. But we've already provided some information to this committee, you know, to go on. I don't believe that private companies are ever going to be able to solve this. The only entity that's here that will be able to cover it is the fire department.
Well, there's another new issue that's cropped up, it's ugly head, is Pride Ambulance Service has gone out of business.
I got an update on that.
They haven't gone out of business?
So the chief from Paw Paw, we were told by a paramedic who told somebody Pride went out of business.
Oh, Mark Miller?
So today I talked to the chief in Paw Paw Fire Department. He called me about something. And I mentioned this, how you guys doing down there without Pride Care? He said, they didn't go out of business.
Really?
It was a media release that got brought about from a disgruntled employee. So, didn't have time to go after that, but that was, I have found that out today about 3 o'clock.
That's interesting, because Mark Miller said things in Kalamazoo are a mess because of that. So,
Yeah, well, because a whole bunch of staff,
Go ahead.
a whole bunch of staff quit, and they were doing interviews and with Life. So, well, I don't know.
It's another reason on the legal aspects of this thing to go through that drill, because by engaging each of the jurisdictions, it's like it'll be their first engagement on what is going to become a millage deal for us. And so they're going to, my sense is, they're going to want the fire district to take responsibility for BLS.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to the extent they go through that process, get to that decision, it's, you know, and part of that deal will be to say to them, this is going to cost money. It's not in our mission now, which is important for everybody to understand. It's not in our funding now, which is important for everybody to understand. So we're not, you can't expect something for nothing. We've got to fund it, and thank you for giving us the ability to do it, if they do. And that obviously is dependent on us being able to generate the funding the only way we can, which is through millage. And then then you tie the bow on it, and it's all said and done, and it sets you up for a successful millage request, I'd say.
So it's not, you know, what it almost reminds me of is the Fenville Ambulance Consortium, where there's interlocal agreements of operation, you know, like Township Insert and Lee, you know, it's an interlocal agreement. It's a Fenville Ambulance Consortium where they each have to pay a share, you know. Essentially, you can do anything with an interlocal agreement.
I was struck by the fact, because I'm working with you, and you put me in touch with that lady from AMR, and I asked them the question, what legal agreements do you have? We have none. We have none, period.
Wow.
It was the shortest email.
Jeez.
And it occurred, the only legal agreement is the one between the township and Life for out by Fennel.
Wow.
That's correct.
And that got set up because the township's responsible for that
Mm-hmm. I remember when the
service.
township did that.
Nobody else, none of our other jurisdictions have any, AMR goes out of business tomorrow or says screw you or whatever, we got nothing.
Mm-hmm.
No ability to, legal agreement gives you the ability to get reviews, professional reviews, cost reviews, set the rates, agree to the rates,
And
response time
response time.
windows, everything.
Right, now, no one has really any right to say, I watched a football player on the field for 40 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
because there's no agreement, and if I may,
Sure.
Alex from AMR, the supervisor, said, Dan, you're absolutely right, there should be agreement with the jurisdiction, because that's how it's typically done, that she's familiar with. There aren't a lot of districts in western Michigan. And she said, that's the way it should be done, happy to do so that rate, fees, response times, these things are agreed upon, and of course, there will be a surcharge.
Mm-hmm.
The problem that I have with, say, some of the proposals I saw was, okay, so you want an ambulance here, let's engage private. XYZ ambulance comes in here for $750,000 a year. That was the quote. And they have to be housed, including a dorm, bedroom, separate for man and woman.
Mm-hmm.
$750,000 a year, and they're gonna leave the area.
Yeah, they may not be here.
What, so, we're not gambling, but for what it's worth, there's more to it than let's just have an ambulance here. We can have a BLS, a transport capability, if the taxpayers want us to.
Let's go up.
That's part of the challenge, too, when that time comes, is explaining what the difference is between BLS and ALS.
Yeah,
Because to
right.
the rest of the world out there, it's an ambulance.
Right.
In the whole resource allocation, let the
Right.
ambulances go to where they're really needed to help.
Yeah.
Other than, okay, they're on their way here, oh, I'm on my way to a priority 2 or 3, oh, I got a detour and go to a...
And to try to explain that to the populace is gonna be almost impossible, because it takes a big, long explanation to explain ambulance service, and who's gonna listen to it? It's gonna be a yes or a no. So,
Well, my gut would be you really only explain the BLS part of it. That's what we're offering. The remainder would be the advanced, other more serious, is a contracted service for a fee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And we'll,
but it's gonna be difficult to sort
I
that
know,
all out
I
in
know,
people's
I know,
heads.
but I also don't think
And make
people
them
want
understand.
to vote against ambulance.
Well, if you're laying there with
Library's
a
one
broken
thing.
hip, you want,
What?
if you're laying there with a broken hip,
Exactly.
Well, it
yeah.
gets to be important.
Yeah, or if it's your mom or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, it's upsetting. Wait 45 minutes
So
for
I'm-
help.
The only thing I had to offer is, and I'll send you an email, because I couldn't get this done in time, it's just current projects that I'm working on now. And there's a
I
printed
thought there'd be a
list here.
second page, but it's just the one page.
That's just for this month.
Yeah.
Be kidding,
That's
that's
for
for
this
this week.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
all
felt a
right.
bit overloaded, so,
I think we can adjourn.
thank you, board,
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, we're out of here.
thank you.